In a society where it's easy to pop a pill to solve a problem, our next guest is taking the road less traveled by leading the medication-free revolution for treating children and adults with psychological and behavioral difficulties. Clinical psychologist Dr. Robert Reynolds is the clinical director at the Reynolds Clinic in Middletown, and he's joined by Jay Salvio, whose two children are patients of Dr. Reynolds. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Dr. Reynolds, let's first of all talk about what is ADHD for those who do not know.
Well, ADHD is probably the most commonly diagnosed problem that children have nowadays. And it is a brain-based problem. It's neurological in its nature, and it affects the child's behavior typically in two predominant ways. The first is what we call an inattentive type. This is the type of child who has ADHD that has trouble paying attention, following through. He gets easily distracted. This is the more common type. But also we see a hyperactive impulsive type, and these are the ones that get the most attention because their behavior is so out of control. Motor always on the go, they're jumping and leaping around, they're stepping out of turn, they're invading other spaces. So there's a lot of behavioral issues with the type 2, whereas the type 1 is much more of a laid back, less obvious.
And ADHD stands for Attention Deficit
Hyperactivity disorder.
And how common is it?
Well, the figures vary, but at this point I think we're looking at somewhere between 10 and 12% of children nowadays being diagnosed with it.
Jay, both your children were diagnosed with ADHD?
Both were diagnosed with ADHD, and the form that Dr. Reynolds was mentioning earlier, which they don't have the hyperactivity component, but they have the attention and focus issues.
So what were you seeing with your children?
Well, we saw it first with my son, and he was having some difficulty in school, staying on task, staying focused. He had some more other subtle signs of issues that were going on. He was also describing at some point difficulties reading and concentrating and understanding what he had read. Shortly after he had read it, he would say that he would have to read things over and over again.
And your daughter?
My daughter, my son, we started to notice something probably around 4th grade, 5th grade, and my daughter was more subtle, and we started to notice it around 7th grade, and she was a little less obvious. She would drift off in class. She would just sort of, her focus might go to the butterfly outside the window.
She just couldn't stay focused in the classroom.
Yeah, and she would come back, and she was always a hard worker in class. And out of class, so it was a little bit more difficult to pick up on. But once we got the sense that I think there's something going on here, we touched base with Dr. Reynolds and confirmed she also has some focus issues.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. We talked about type 1 and type 2. There's also type 3 ADHD?
Well, yes, and that's a very tricky type because it really combines type 1 and type 2. It's several symptoms from each. And the problem with that is that as soon as you try to help a child pay better attention, they start going into a hyperactive mode, and as soon as you try to help them manage the hyperactivity, they stop paying attention. And so they're fluctuating sometimes in the course of a day between these two states, and it's like trying to hit a moving target.
And I would assume that treatment is best when you can get it early, and your approach is using brain mapping and neurofeedback training.
Yes, it is. That's the centerpiece of what we do. But I also want to say, Jocelyn, and I'll talk about that technology in a minute, we also do a lot of work with the families because we find that you can be a lot more effective working with the parents to give them the skills that they need to manage the household better. In addition, we do a lot of work in the schools. In fact, in Jay's case, we've gone into both of his children's schools, and we have talked to the faculty and helped them to understand the challenges that these children face and what they can do to help these children be more successful. And then in addition, we do the neurofeedback training that you're referring to.
All right, let's talk about that. How does that all work?
Well, it starts out with what we call a brain map or a quantitative EEG. What we do is we simply put a bathing cap over a child's head, sort of like what you're seeing in the view, that has electrodes or sensors that are embedded in it. And those sensors are actually reading the electrical activity the child's brain is producing. And it allows us to then take a look at the map, so to speak, basically a way to compare that child's activity with the map of a normal child. So then we know where the dysregulation is.
The abnormal area is.
Correct.
Okay.
Once we've identified that, then we know what we need to do when it comes to the neurofeedback training, which is then how to take those areas and teach the child how to regulate them better. So once we do, we see the attention coming online, we see better self-control, better self-management, even increased self-awareness.
And so the neurofeedback, here we're showing the video game here. How does that all relate?
Yes, well, this young lady is watching a video game, and she has electrodes or sensors that are placed on various parts of her head. And as she is watching the display, in this case those rocket ships, if she's really paying attention and producing good electrical activity, the rocket ships are going to take off, particularly the one in the middle. And over time, it teaches her how to manage her focus, how to manage her attention, and once she's learned to do it, that's permanent. It's almost like learning to ride a bike. You never forget it.
Jay, what did you see as your children went through this type of process? What benefits did you see for your kids?
The most obvious was their ability to focus and stay focused did improve. As I was telling you earlier, my son said that he would have difficulty reading and understanding, or really comprehending, knowing what he had just read. He went from never really wanting to read because it was very difficult to being a reader. And the same happened with my daughter, but even to a more profound extent. My daughter is now really a voracious reader. She'll consume books.
That's great news.
I think also that especially his daughter turned in from a somewhat average to below average student to a very, very good student who now is enjoying school and wants to go. And we had some struggles with her not even wanting to go because she was having so little success in the classroom.
And just really quickly, we're running out of time, but you prescribe skills before pills, and you really, really hold off in prescribing medication.
It's not that we're against the medicine, Jocelyn. It's just that we feel that all too often it's the first thing and the only thing a parent is offered. We believe that if we can teach children the skills that they need to manage their lives better, we've given them a gift for life, not just for the time they're on a medication.
Very good, and I know, Jay, that was why you approached Dr. Reynolds. Now, for people who want to know more about what you're doing, you have an upcoming open house, and that is Wednesday, December 28th from 6:30 to 8:30, and Saturday, October 1st, from 9 a.m. to noon.
Yes, and that's a demonstration, actually, Jocelyn.
Oh, good.
So people who actually want to see this technology and see how it works and actually kind of hands-on with it, they ought to come to the Saturday one.
And it is free, and also you can register online, and the phone number also is there, 860-343-0227, or you can go online, as I said, reynoldsclinic.com.
That's it.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Jocelyn. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. And don't go away. There's more Connecticut Style right after this.